Yeah, this time of year.
What was that part? Remember, we're going live here
From
from
everything.
the stadium, et cetera. Good afternoon. Thursday, March 13th, and we're back from floor, and Damian Leonard, our legislative counsel, is back in the chair, and we are looking at draft 5.3 of this year's transportation bill.
It's in our packet.
It should be online on our committee page.
Yes.
5.3.
Just trying to make things interesting now with the numbers, just gonna.
So 22 pages. We're reaching up on our top end. Sorry. Any effort to get it under 20, there's a bet out there. No, sorry. All right, let's,
We're on 12.
we have, last I counted, wherever we were at with we still have 14 sections. We have 15 sections now.
Still waiting for Ken.
So now we're slightly better than halfway there. 8 out of 15. Let's see what we can get done today. I'll hand it on over to you about changes that we discussed this morning and see what new language there is and what section we may or may not be able to, and what phone of friends we might need, and what additional testimony, et cetera. How do we get through the next few sections? So if you're able to take it away at some point.
Cam, could you let me into the meeting?
Yes.
As soon as I'm in, I'll post it to the page. Or to the screen. All right. Okay, so let me that's down to the right section.
This is draft 5.3.
5.3. Yep. 2:06 p.m. So the first is recovery of funding for canceled local projects.
Pages.
This is going to be on page 5, section 4. The changes here were the ones we discussed before the break, extending the timeline for the appeal from 15 days to 30 days. And then once the appeal is filed, requiring the board to schedule a hearing on the petition following receipt of the appeal and issuing an appropriate order after the hearing, taking out the 2 30-day timelines there for hearing the petition and issuing an order. So this gives more time for a municipality to both file an appeal and more time for the appeal to be processed, which means they can put together the record as they're getting through that process.
Representative Powell?
Yeah, this would be for the agency a question, or to either one. So they're given 30 days and you have a process that you notify the town administrator or whoever when they're notified that they're, want to reclaim the funds for this grant. And you've already had discussions with them, I assume.
Yeah, so for the record, Michelle Boonhauer, Agency of Transportation, in talking to the chief engineer before this meeting, he said typically what will happen is the community will notify us that they are not going to be paying back the funds after we have asked them perhaps, or get asked for status or that kind of thing. And at that point, that would be when the agency would determine if all negotiations have been exhausted, and we would petition the T-board. It could also be the town that petitions the T-board, but I guess historically it's been the agency trying to avoid petitioning the T-board because we try to settle these things, and we've most historically been able to settle them. So, but yeah, that's how it would happen. There'd be that back and forth communication between the municipality and the agency. And somebody, whoever's going to petition the T-board would be letting them know.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah.
Other questions on this section?
Okay.
I feel like I've got to send it back out to our group that asked us to consider their piece. So regional planning commissions and the VAPDA particularly Devin Neary that wrote their piece. I would think, I mean, I could just go ahead, but I don't think that's the way it should work. I think we need to go back and ask them if they're okay with this, and if they're not, then I'm gonna suggest we take it out and ask them to work it out with, or which part they're not okay with, and see if we can at least change the days, otherwise we're gonna take it out. That's good. Everybody have any other comments on that? Okay, that's the plan then. If I had enough nods, I got at least a half a dozen nods. Thank you. Okay, Damien.
All right, I'm just gonna make a note to myself. Great.
I appreciate that. I guess I'm just copying my predecessor. She used to make us nod and it really annoyed me, so I thought I'd get the chance to annoy the members in return.
I really need to see a nod her hands here.
Yeah, she used to, didn't she? Sorry. Look at her, her face is red now.
I used to get all stirred up, but anyways, yeah.
Oh, but some tradition.
Oh,
All right, so section 6, no, actually section 7. Use of the rail trails. So I think the committee is aware that the Vermont Traditions is a coalition, VTC, has had requested that the language around the prohibition on hunting be changed. And the chair asked me to update that to, so previously it said hunting, trapping, or molesting wildlife. And the proposed change that the chair asked me to include for consideration is harassing or molesting wildlife except for fishing. So
Continuing on to number 8.
Oh, and then, yeah, the use or discharge of firearms is, or other weapons, and that's important if you consider bow hunting or something like that, is also prohibited on the trail. So did the whole committee get that email from Vermont Traditions? Or
I got it.
okay, so may I paraphrase?
Please.
My understanding is that the concern is that there could be a misunderstanding with the hunting, trapping, or molesting wildlife language if someone is using the trail to access land where they can hunt, knowing that hunting is already prohibited on the trail, trapping is prohibited within 50 feet of the trail, and then you're also prohibiting the discharge or use of firearms and other weapons. So they had asked for this change to avoid confusion if someone is traveling down the trail with their hunting rifle to get to a hunting location, but not actually hunting from the trail. So perhaps riding their bike 2 miles in, leaving their bike near the trail, and then heading into the woods to get to their deer stand or something like that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So
Yeah, so it did say trapping too, is that right?
it said hunting, trapping, or molesting wildlife. Yes.
So now it doesn't,
So now it says harassing or molesting wildlife.
and you can't discharge, but it doesn't say anything about trapping, or unless that's molesting. I don't know.
is there a definition of molesting wildlife?
Yeah.
I mean, what is that?
So
You got a phone the friend here in the background as a.
Michelle Boomhauer, Vermont Agency of Transportation, and I think Damien noted this earlier. There is another portion of statute related to trapping laws, which does not allow you to trap within 50 feet of the trail. And in most locations, the right of way of the trail is less than 50 feet. So I feel like we are covered in that regard.
yeah, and just the comment on the definition of molesting. So we do not define it in the statute there, which means that we would turn to our common definition, common usage of molesting, which would be I just looked online and they had harass or pester aggressively. But it would be something along those lines. A lot of times when you get into court, it depends on which dictionary the judge prefers. If they're arguing over what the word means, Justice Scalia was famous because he liked the American Heritage Dictionary. So anytime you wanted to convince him, you better hope it was in the American Heritage Dictionary. It didn't matter if Webster's or Oxford had it. Other judges prefer Webster's. Oxford is rare in the US because it's more England's than US definitions. So, but typically we just look to that. So aggressively harassing or pestering wildlife, and then harassing. So in some ways it's a duplicative, but the other,
To me, up to me, I don't know.
yeah, we do see it in statutes, but it's a somewhat antiquated term when you get away from the more common modern usage, which is in terms of abuse typically.
It's in Title 10, the part they're referring to. I did right here. It says,
Yeah, and
Vermont rail trails designated and mapped by the Vermont Agency of Transportation is all included in Title 10. It says they can't do it.
yeah, so I can pull that up for the committee if you'd like to see the language. Mr. Chair, can I ask for the assist on the section number there so I don't?
Let's see, Title 10, Appendix Vermont Fish and Wildlife Regulations, Chapter 1, Game, Subchapter 004, Fur-bearing animals, 10 VSA, and then 44 fur-bearing species, and go down, and then 3.14, a public trail, then a little further down, the Agency of Transportation Trail, where did it go? Oops. You're stretching my
That's okay, you're good. I'll get it to you. That's all I need for now.
3.14C, Vermont Rail Trails, an Agency of Transportation prohibited. There we go.
Right.
They're part of the places that it's prohibited action. So it is it is in there.
So for everyone's benefit here, it defines public trail to include Vermont rail trails designated and mapped by the Agency of Transportation, as well as the Appalachian Trail, the Long Trail. And then if we work down here, it says a person shall not set a trap. Hold on, I'll find the 50-foot requirement here. There we go, trapping setbacks. Trapping setbacks, no foothold traps or body gripping traps shall be set on or within 50 feet of the traveled portion of a legal trail, public trail, or public highway. And so the rail trails are a public trail. So already trappers are legally prohibited from being within 50 feet under the regulations here for trapping. And then we're already prohibiting the discharge or use of a weapon on the trail. So already if someone engaged in hunting, even if it was bringing their vehicle onto the trail and taking shots from the trail to hunt something that was off the trail, that would be prohibited. They have to get off the trail and out of the right of way. And in the case of trapping, they have to get 50 feet out of the traveled portion of the trail. So, questions? So that, obviously, this is a policy call for the committee. So those are the requirements that are around it. We do sometimes have duplicative language in statute. In fact, we frequently do. So a lot of it depends on the question of whether you think this improves clarity, harms clarity, whether you want to see that language or not. That's really a call for the committee here generally. So this is the requested change, and it's showed here so that you can consider it.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're all, anybody got 5 or 6 shaking heads? There we go. Or say, what am I gonna say then? All, anybody who's opposed?
It just reads weird.
That makes those
It
guys.
does read weird.
Think
You can
so.
molest fish.
I assume,
You can.
yeah.
It just reads, I don't know.
It does, you can harass fish, yeah.
Molest? Yeah, yeah. I don't know, just.
It's,
Sounds like a
I
base.
agree with that.
Hop in your car and driving down the road, I mean,
Yeah, you with that hairy body over there.
it's just the way it's written, like trails, roads.
Mhm.
It just hurt you.
Yeah.
They won't stay in one place. Okay, David.
Material for our skin.
Okay, so that's the change there. All right. Moving on past that language, to the Green Mountain Transit Authority. So we looked at this language this morning.
Section 10.
Section 10, yes, sorry, it's page 11. And of course, I haven't shared it on the screen. Let me pull it back up. One of these days, I will get into a rhythm where I do this. Okay, so this is taking the language that they proposed and putting it in the way we change our statutes. So you'll see the first part, the area of operation shall be Chittenden. Then we strike out all of the other existing language. And if you get on to page 12 here, is that right? 12, yes. 12, line 4, Chittenden, and that should say county. I apologize. That's going to be corrected in the next draft. County for fixed bus route bus service, the Green Mountain, and then the Green Mountain Transit Authority may operate service outside of Chittenden County or demand response transit within Chittenden County as determined by AOT's public transit grant process. Okay, I see some nodding heads.
All right. I got this.
It's okay.
Yeah.
Where,
All right, let me just new draft version. All right, the next change, second half of that page, we've added back in the deletion of the obsolete language from section 10, which is about initial terms of commissioners joining after March 7th, 1973. So we're well past initial terms.
What was the GMT was good with that, right? That was a GMT.
Yeah, that was their request.
Just outdated.
It was, as they say, a twinkle in my parents' eyes. So, anyway, I don't know. So next, general aid for state highways.
I'm sorry, are we saying we don't need to go any further with section 10? We're good with it as is, that we are checking off section 10? Okay.
Yeah.
Then we get my other note page and say we're done. We added a section or we're set. 1, 2, 3 are good, 4 still on hold, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 are checked off.
Yep. Okay. That brings us to section 11, town highways. So if you'll remember, the update here is going to be able to make the appropriation language consistent with the 3, so we don't end up with any strange appropriation. So I had to add back in the general aid to town highways program just to add this clarification to the language. So excluding appropriations under this subsection and subsections E and H. And then in subsection E, the town highway structures, we updated the language to say under this subsection and subsections A and H. And then in subsection H, which is the class 2 highway roadway program, we're saying under this subsection H and subsections A and E. So all 3 of the subsections are encompassed in each of them. Just have to word it slightly different because it's different subsections, and that's how we draft. So, any questions? Those are the only changes in number 11 or section 11.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. Did I get off track here then? 11,
So just A1.
oh, because 10,
and
or no, where are we?
A1 and A.
Number 11.
Where you have highlighted.
Yeah, so,
Has, okay, that's where I'm looking at. Okay.
yeah, so section 11, A1, subdivision A1A, subdivision E1A, and subdivision H1A were the three amendments there, just clarifying that they're all pulling from the same pool in terms of determining the percentage change in total appropriations from T fund revenues.
I guess I'm gonna dial a friend over at our JFO and say, would you please, if you care to, comment on, does the language translate back to the numbers for what we expect for the budget request when they go to build the budget next year? That we will no longer be on those minimums, they will at least have been reviewed. They may or may not move, but they at least will be reviewed for the two factors that we've discussed.
Yeah, so for the record, Logan North, the Joint Fiscal Office, I do believe that this language will fulfill the legislative intent as stated it. It will cause the formula to go into effect for these three programs, and depending on the outcome of the formula, increase it or stay the same. This is the language we need to have in.
And it'll build on top of it each year if appropriate, if it passes the test.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
Hey,
thank you. Of course.
That's good.
And then we're asking for thumbs up. Phil says this time it's gotta be a thumbs up.
Right, there we go.
What was that movie? I didn't get our wrong file. Was that what's his name there from Blazing Saddles?
Blazing Saddles.
Get a harumph out of that first. All right.
All
We're
righty.
saying we can check off another section, number 11, after many ins and outs, is ready to go by all accounts. All right.
All right, now we're on to the mileage-based user fee.
We're on page.
Page 18, section 12. And we will actually skip down to page 20, line 2. So during lunch, Patrick got in touch with me to let me know that while he was listening to my testimony, he realized that the original language we'd worked out should revert back to between annual inspections, because they'll be measuring the distance or the mileage at annual inspections, but they will not be looking to the inspection stations to collect the fee. That'll report back to the agency and the fee will be collected separately.
DMV.
Yeah, through the DMV. So we've switched back to between annual inspections here on line 2. And with the language here in 3, what I've done again is to clean up and clarify so that we're going back to the between annual inspections. And the highlighting here it's scattered around just to show my editing staff where I was making changes in there, but we're back to the last annual inspection. And then we were on the annual vehicle miles traveled at the 98th percentile. That's where we left off. And so I left that highlighted so I would remember where to pick up. Questions on the annual inspections language from the first part?
I would, so I saw my car halfway through. I see the language in there that says or terminating event.
Mhm.
If I sell it privately, what happens?
Well, so when you sell it privately, the title and registration have to change.
Okay.
That's when they know there's.
And the
terminating
mileage
event.
is there, so it goes back to the DMV, and then they'll have a record, and then they'll have to bill the person that sold the car.
Right. So you'll have to pay the fee for that last portion there. So basically they'll look at where were you at your last inspection? Where were you at? What's the mileage that's recorded when the car is transferred? And at that point, they'll multiply that out and send you a bill. So,
And if it's driven out of state and sold out, excuse me, I mean, if it's sold out of state, same thing, right?
Please, our friend, Agency of Transportation.
Michelle Boomhauer, Agency of Transportation. So these are the nuances that we are going to be working out over the next year. So when we come back to testify in next session, we will have clarity on these types of questions for you all. Because we want to make sure we understand how they're going to function in the system and then how the user, the public is going to interface with all of this. So put a pin in it, I guess they would say.
If I can remember that.
Representative Couch.
Yeah, and I'll sort of add, I guess, just to make sure. And at that point, you're gonna come back, hopefully all these details on making sure the computer system in DMV will flag things. And then at that point, if legislature wants to move forward, we would then at that point set the rates.
Yes, that's correct. We're holding that till the end. And that will be the big sort of trigger point. Next session is what the rate will be.
I assume that whoever reports this on the floor would say it's the intent to equivalent to what the gas tax is.
And I think that's clarified in the language that it would be the state and federal gas tax, which is something y'all talked about.
Thank you.
Sounds like a section for you, Phil.
I know. I'll have to do this one.
You'd like to do this section?
Don't you have a
For the
vested
newer
interest?
members, was a little chance to go. We're doing fine on time. For the newer members, generally what happens with the transportation bill is that, so what are we up to? 15 sections, or and some of them are bigger than others, but generally speaking, it's for a lot of new members and whatnot that it's sort of divided up and everybody presents a section. So I generally will open up on the floor and discuss the bill overall and then pass it to a member through the speaker. Patty won't present, and Tim, Representative Corcoran's unlikely to present.
Yeah, it's,
He always does his section.
Am I confusing that with cabaret and Friday meetings?
You're
confusing with
the DMV bill. I
I
think
recall-
Representative Corcoran should present the part of absolutely no hunting on the rail trail.
Hunting is not mentioned in the list. So I might have been confusing that, but most, for many new members, it's the first time that they might present a bill on the floor, but generally speaking, we will divide up the sections of particular interest or a particular piece that's important to you. It's generally an opportunity for the first floor presentation of most freshmen, what generally has happened, at least in my time here. And then each year, in the second year, most everybody will take a piece that's relevant to them and whatnot. So if there is a part you like, or a particular part that you would be willing to do or whatnot, think about which section, and it passes through the speaker to each person. Then I generally sum up at the end, I guess. So that's sort of how that'll work. Everybody in the house will get a feel for who the members are in the committee. So across the floor. And sounds like we have a volunteer section already. Did I mess that up appropriately?
No, that's good. I had a question on the amount of money. 3.7 has been thrown out there, 700,000 for a match. I guess this is from Michelle. Is that, it sounds like we're not gonna get any federal money. It's gonna be pure state dollar. So does that 700,000 disappear, and it's just mainly 300 if we want to come up with a dollar amount? I mean, 3 million,
So,
not 3.7?
yeah, to clarify, I would say that the grant that would be received from the federal government, unlike the NEVI program for electric vehicle charging, this grant is not completely off the table yet, but it's still in that sort of land where we don't know exactly what's going to happen. The 700,000 or 750,000, say 700, that we have already, we would be using that. The original grant or the grant award was for 3.5 million. And, I think, Patrick has worked with DMV and we believe that, we can do this for, like right now, we've been talking about 3 million minus the 700,000. And so like whatever amount we can find to get going on things would be, the number if it were only 500,000 or 1 million, I don't know that we could really deliver on what you're looking for.
So you're looking like for two, so there is really no match, obviously with state dollars, so you're looking for 2.2, 2.3.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
When would the work? Is there a time frame that I was missing as to when the work was going to plan to start? Or is it wasn't planning to start until later and when would the money coming in, it's like they're waiting for the money, but that money wasn't here yet anyway. There was a date more like when it was gonna start.
Well, we had kind of hoped we would have an executed grant agreement with the feds by now and we would
Okay.
be starting.
So we did expect it to happen
Yeah, so-
now, not this fall.
Right, and we are, we are still cautiously optimistic that if the money didn't come until July 1st through another means other than the federal grant, then that we could still potentially meet the target deadline of July 1st, 2026. And I think if we found that, if we get into this, and we get back to you in January and say, this is where we're at, it's gonna take another 3 months or 6 months or whatever, that's what we're gonna be telling you at that time. But we understand that we need to move as expeditiously as possible because we're already so far behind in what our original objectives were.
Okay. So anybody that's got a way of creating 2.2 to 2.3 million dollars so that we can be ready to go with this next year, I'm all ears.
Bake sale,
And some good cookies.
we do in Hubbard and
Could
I have to
loan,
have a couple of them.
could loan money at a high interest rate, knowing it is going to generate the funds coming back, right? So
It's not, that has gone through, like, with the treasurer's office, it could, any kind of,
I don't know.
borrowing, knowing that we're gonna be generating enough money to give it back in a year. Is there-
I've been in this seat,
Internal-
I've been in this seat as long as you've been in that one, so I don't know the answer to that question, but I like the idea.
So I can speak to that a little bit. We've talked about this before in programs that I've worked on the legislation for. You'd be pulling, basically loaning from the general fund and paying it back. The state doesn't have a revolving loan program for its own programs. So that was proposed for a paid family leave program a few years back. It was I will just say it was very heated conversation. And ultimately, I think the provision was dropped. But there was a proposal in there and Colorado did this when they stood up their paid family leave program. They borrowed $20 million from the state and then paid it back at interest through revenues, which meant that you had to absorb those costs into the program, which for not going down the rabbit hole there of paid leave, but that made the program more expensive, which also made that less palatable in this case. Maybe, but I don't imagine that there's a lot of general fund dollars sitting around right now. What I heard was over $200 million of requests for the appropriations committee and 290.
Yeah.
So 50% higher than I thought. And not nearly enough money to cover those. So that's the one problem here is anything that you take out on this needs to come out of another program.
There's always me.
So
always maintenance.
I'm thinking something else, but we'll see.
Tim has got some ideas. I'm sorry, Representative Corcoran. All right, more, I don't want to shut off discussion if that's where we were, but that's, so did we complete we're still in the language on section?
We're still in MBUF.
Okay,
This is the section where it's so interesting that you guys keep heading off in different directions with questions and comments and discussion topics. So the next change here is just same change we discussed above, going back to the annual inspections and the mileage reporting period. This change here, the imposition of the mileage-based user fee, this is moving away from the annual inspections. So because the inspection station wouldn't actually be billing the individual, so that the agency would bill on an annual, quarterly, or monthly basis, selected by the owner or lessee and reconciled upon that should say upon
Inspection.
upon annual following annual inspection. I'll work with Patrick to clean that language up. And maybe he sent me the language and I missed it when I was updating this. So I'm just gonna go. All right, we'll fix that, or within 60 days after a terminating event. I'm imagining we're going to say reconciled within 60 days after Vermont annual inspection. But yeah, I'll check with Patrick just to make sure we get that language right.
he might even be out there and
Actually, he's online with us right now.
I'm not sure if it's.
Do you want to chime in?
If we can,
Yeah. Record, Patrick Murphy, Vermont Agency of Transportation. Yeah, so that language should be correct, that the reconciliation process would happen at the time of renewing your registration, because that's when you're taking the data from the vehicle inspection process, but you're actually reconciling the billing and what has been paid to that date at that point. So the registration process is the key part of being able to ensure that people are getting their vehicles registered, or else that 98th percentile flat fees is put in place of that. So it's the registration process where everything is reconciled, unless there is that terminating event where there's a mid-year sale of a vehicle, in which case the reconciliation would happen at that point with the prior owner.
Okay, so this is actually correct then, this language?
It should be, yeah.
Okay.
You're talking about car inspection, not registration, right? I mean, it's when you're getting car inspected, right? Not or registration.
Renewal of the registration,
Oh,
when you renew the
Okay.
registration.
There's two
But
things
when you
wrong.
inspect the car is when you're getting the mileage.
Yeah.
So
that's what I thought, yeah.
there may not always be the same.
So you do your inspection, and this is just seeing if I understand it. You do your inspection, you get your mileage difference, and there's your bill. And then you have registrations later or before, and so that whole, if you paid in, you have a bill. If you paid in something, that's when you reconcile it in registrations.
I'll let Patrick.
Yeah, I'm gonna let Patrick take that one.
Sure. So the odometer readings are being taken at the inspection process. That's the way it works in Vermont. You first need to have your vehicle registered before you get your vehicle inspected. So the two processes are not always going to line up. But as with most other tax regimes, you're not necessarily paying an exact amount, and so that has been traveled. So at the end of the year, you're basically reconciling that amount when you're going to re-register your vehicle. So there may be months where you're paying more than what you've actually traveled. But in the end, the amount that's been entered through the vehicle inspection process helps to reconcile that as you go forward year to year.
Representative Patton?
So can I just ask a question, Patrick? I buy a car, use electric vehicle, and its inspection sticker was the previous month. So it's already inspected. Now I go and get the title and register it. But I won't get an inspection for, 11 months. And at that point, I'll get an inspection and you'll know how many miles, the DMV will know how many miles I've driven. But I won't be billed until I go to get my next registration, and I'll be billed for what I drove.
Not necessarily. I think these are, as Michelle had mentioned earlier, these are details that you'll get to see in the statutory language that's proposed. Because there are a number of different ways to approach it in terms of prepayment, sort of estimating out what you would need to pay on a monthly basis and then reconciling, or doing it the other way around, where you're not paying until the end of that first, a registration year, and then you're figuring out from there what your estimated payments would be on a monthly or quarterly basis, or whatever time frequency is selected. So there's different ways to approach it, but we haven't, honed in on exactly which one would be the preferred method.
And I imagine part of it is how would the computer system do it, or how would you estimate, so, all right, so the actual detail like that, you're sort of, is part of what still needs to be done.
Yeah, this language here that is before you is really to provide the framework within which the agency can work to be able to design the system and then come back with language to you in January that is firm, so that you're able to kind of be comfortable with what we're moving forward with.
Thank you.
Sure.
Changed my mind. Where are we?
All right, we're going on to section 13, which is the intent section.
Wait a minute, then.
Oh, wait, no, you have to ask
I mean, we're done
everyone
with section
for
12 or
Yeah,
not?
you want to get the thumbs up.
thumbs up on section
Sure.
12.
I have a lot of questions on that. Now, what do we, where are we at with section 12?
That's the
Cover what-
very end of it.
Is it
Yeah.
do what the agency needed for this particular update?
Yeah.
And do we have any other spot that we need to hear from on this?
They'll have to work out.
Yeah, the final.
We can't know in advance.
This is a preview of your transportation bill next year. It's going to be much longer.
Much longer. So we're saying we're good with section 12 then at this point,
Mhm.
and we don't need to hear from anywhere else.
Yeah, and the Senate might have
It's a
another.
work in progress. Is that what we're,
No, I think it's good. Has more details to follow.
but mileage-based user fee is a work in progress. And section 12 is good to go. Let it ring forth. All righty. We're getting there.
Great.
13 is,
13 is, whoa, went the wrong
so
way.
13 is now, what was 13 is now 14, and there we go. There's a new section 13.
Yep. This is the intent section. This is in blue, and this is just for my editor's benefit. We hadn't looked at this, so I didn't want them to edit it. So I changed the color. Doesn't mean anything else. So this just says that it's the intent of the General Assembly that the mileage-based user fee be approximately equivalent to the amount collected by the state and federal government in gas tax revenue from the use of a non-PEV pleasure car registered in Vermont, and the amount collected by the state and federal government in gas tax revenue and increased registration fee from the use of a plug-in hybrid electric vehicle pleasure car. So this is taking your intent language from last year and updating it to say that you want it to be equivalent to not only the state gas tax revenue, the state and federal gas tax revenue. And in the case of the plug-in hybrid, we're looking at that revenue plus the And that should actually probably say EV infrastructure fee there instead of increased registration fee.
I have a question.
Is that yours? There's,
I think, yeah, I'll go first, if that's all right.
Yeah.
rank.
I just wonder if we shouldn't say, and we've added the federal. I wonder if we say, until such time as the federal government is capturing their fair share, I guess.
So what Representative Pouch is referencing is the federal government has having the same problem with its transportation funding. Is to the tune of billions of dollars. Their annual transportation bills are underfunded and they have to pull from general fund revenues because they are stuck on the gas tax too, and they're seeing those revenues go down. So there is also discussion at the federal level about what do we do to make this self-supporting. Because of the nature of Congress, that discussion has not moved anywhere. And it's not clear when or if it will. But that's being discussed. So I think what Representative Pouch was getting at was the idea of, do we need to say until such time as the federal government comes up with a replacement for the gas tax to address electric vehicles? I don't know that we need that intent in here. You could put it in here. But I don't know that it changes the question about the fee we're setting now, which is what this, I think, is getting at more. So I think you could leave well enough alone, and we'll see if Congress ever gets to a point where it's ready to figure out a new funding regime.
Right. I mean, only because this says intent, so it's not really changing anything. It doesn't do anything. It just says this is our intent. And I think it'd be clear to say it's our intent, because I believe it is, that if 3 years from now, the federal government says, hey, you own an electric vehicle, we're not getting any federal gas tax, so pay this, however they do it. If it's in here as our intent, it would be removed from the state tax or the state NBUF. I think it would be good to have in there so that when we get those questions, we can point and say, it's my job.
Representative White is up next.
I agree with Representative Pouch on adding that clarification. And I have a couple questions. So is PEV and PHEV, are those,
Define terms.
are they both plug-in electric vehicle?
Plug-in PEV is plug-in electric vehicle.
Yeah,
And so non-PEV is any internal combustion engine powered
Right.
vehicle that doesn't plug in. PEV includes both BEVs, which are battery electric vehicles, so pure electric, and PHEVs, which are plug-in hybrid electric
okay,
vehicles.
so PEV includes PHEV and BEV.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So when we're saying non-PEV, it means everything that doesn't have an electric motor in it.
Okay. And then my second question is, I thought that our intent was, once the MBUF was up and running, the increased registration fee would go away.
Not for plug-in hybrid electric.
Not for.
It's just for battery electric. Yeah.
So-
So your pure electric vehicles will no longer pay the electric vehicle infrastructure fee. They'll be paying the MBUF. At some time in the future, you could transition the MBUF over so it starts to capture more vehicles. But right now, the way it's written, that is not what's happening currently. That's a discussion for sometime in the future. And I think part of the concern about that is what's the fair way to proceed in terms of making sure that road users are paying their fair share And so historically, the gas tax has been how internal combustion engines have paid their fair share. And since plug-in hybrids are still buying gas, they were left out as well, as my understanding, until the legislature gets to a point where they decide whether to move everybody over to the MBUF and discontinue the gas tax or do something different. And there was a funding study that came out in, I think, January, the final version came out that explained some of the amounts that these different things would generate, and also looked at things like indexing the gas tax for inflation, since right now, anytime you want to increase it, you actually have to come back and adjust it. But none of that is on the table right now. So for anyone listening, there is not a gas tax increase on the table.
No?
Please don't quote me in Digger.
We have taken.
Federal
About the gas
government
tax.
has decided since 1993 to raise their federal gas tax.
So
Michelle is,
Yeah,
phone of a friend is up.
so I just want to clarify that for plug-in hybrid vehicles, there will be a mechanism for us to collect a mileage-based user fee from them. And they will be part of the transition that happens at the same time as the mileage-based user fee happens. It will just be calculated in a different manner due to the fact that they do operate on gasoline and on electricity, but we can't differentiate. So they'll be included. So the EV SE infrastructure fund that we now have that all these monies are going to will go away once the mileage-based user fee comes online.
Representative Corcoran and then Representative McCollum.
Guess I'll take a different take on this. I guess I feel uncomfortable with this language, probably for a couple of reasons, but the first is where gas assessment is structured now. I mean, it fluctuates. I mean, it's a 3 or 4 month look back, and it fluctuates. So if we're doing the state and federal, we're locking that in. So there is no look back. What it is what it is. So there's really no wiggle room or adjustments that these cars can make because you're locked in. There's no look back. So that it's almost they're getting penalized in a sense. So I have heartburn where we're saying we're going to include the federal too. It's really taking up all the room of capacity for. I don't know where I was going with that, but the second issue is that we want to make EV owners feel like they are maybe getting a little bit of a deal. It shouldn't go out of the way, but we still have numbers to hit, and if they feel like, well, what's the incentive for me to buy an EV if I'm paying the same rate as everybody else? So I have heartburn from that end too, but mostly is because of the look back. Our gas tax fluctuates. There is no fluctuation here. We're just saying eat it all up with a federal dollar. So I would actually be probably opposed to this language. So that's the way I look at
it. Michelle first, and then
I'm actually would like Patrick to comment on that concern of Representative Corcoran, because this is an element that we've had discussions about, if that's okay with you.
please do, Patrick, and then over to you.
Yeah, thank you. So we are trying to make sure that electric vehicle owners are generating what's equivalent to the same sort of net revenue as the equivalent gas vehicle. The introduction of also including the federal tax, the 18.4 cents gas tax. That language, if we bring statutory language to you in January, that language can be included to repeal that section with an effective date that ties it to the introduction of anything at the federal level. So if that is the direction of the committee, that the committee wants to go in, we can certainly make sure that that sunsets. I think generally the thinking behind how we would set the rates is to make sure that we are put on a more sustainable path, that we're incorporating sort of some of the revenue that's been lost and eroded over the past decade or so since the gas tax was last updated here in Vermont. And then to be able to tie in indexing so that we aren't faced with a similar problem with the mileage-based user fee, so that it does keep pace with what we're seeing for construction costs and needs within the transportation system. So that is the intent behind the development of our rate structure, and so that will naturally sort of trend differently than the gas tax over time. But the sort of overall thrust of all of this is that we are aiming to work towards transitioning the fleet through electrification, so that the vast majority of vehicles by 2050 are going to be electric and under this mileage-based user fee system, which ideally is a more sustainable way to fund the transportation programs.
Is there another, I'm sorry, Representative McCoy is up and then.
So I'm just a little confused on the language. Should it be, it is the intent of the General Assembly that the mileage-based user fee for a PEV pleasure car be approximately equivalent to the amount collected by the state and federal government from the use of a non-PEV? Because this doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, so that certainly could be a change in there. This language is almost verbatim what you passed last year.
Okay, so
but the PEV pleasure card would certainly be a clarification.
because that's what the mileage-based user fee is for a PEV pleasure car. And we're trying to be equivalent to the amount collected from the use of a non-PEV car and the amount collected by increase the gas tax plus increased registration for a PHV pleasure car.
Yeah.
Correct. Okay.
Yeah, so it would be BEV, battery electric
Pleasure
vehicle,
car.
I think. And then,
That first
yes,
sentence. I think. Does that make sense to people? Because we say a pleasure car, well, the pleasure car, and it doesn't make sense. I think we have, because we do mention in the last 3 words, a PHV pleasure car, we do say that.
mhm,
That plus, we're saying the state and federal gas tax and the increased registration fee, right? Would be equivalent to the mileage base, but we don't say anything about a PEV or BEV, whatever we want to call it, whatever the technical term is, anywhere in here. We're just saying a pleasure car. Mileage-based user fee. Well, that could be a non-PEV or a BEV or a PEV or whatever we want to call it.
it's a acronym salad.
So that would make more sense to me when I read that sentence. I feel like I'm channeling John Bartholomew.
Oh, boy.
Or Barbara Murphy.
Oh,
Stickler for pretty.
oh, goodness. Wow.
Truthfully, he was our
Yes.
grammatical person.
There's always one in every committee.
Yeah.
So,
Does that make sense?
Did you want to comment on that, Representative Powell?
No, I would agree. I mean, that only adds clarification to it. It doesn't change it.
Okay.
But I did have a comment.
What are we calling it? A BEV? Is it a BEV? A PE? What is it?
PHEV or.
An extra E in
A
there.
PEV and a PHEV. Those are the definitions,
Okay,
right?
so
there's a BEV as
Is it
well.
BEV?
Yeah, then a B.
So, yeah,
Battery electric vehicle, that's what we're.
Battery electric vehicle, which is the pure electric vehicle.
Yes.
PEV includes both plug-in hybrid and pure
Okay,
electric.
then we don't.
Yeah.
We want B.
Yeah.
Because we're doing the PHEV.
So we'll use all three of the different acronyms.
Yeah.
Because we also have to get the internal combustion engine.
Right.
Is that in the definition?
It is in the definitions in Title 23. I can add them to the definitions at the top.
We've had
Just so long as
Yeah.
they're available, that's all.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I actually took them out this year because there was nothing in there about them and now there is. So I can certainly put them back in if you'd like to reopen section 1.
Sorry.
It's the easiest thing in the world, so.
Yeah.
So, and then no one has to ask, wait, what's the difference between a PEV and a PHEV?
Right.
So I'll do that.
Maybe some. Right here, up there.
All right, so, to address, Rep. Cochran's, idea that you certainly, we're gonna have to set this rate next year. We'll set that rate, and I'm assuming Patrick and the agency will come back and say, hey, if your car gets 25 miles to the gallon, here's how much you're paying. If your car gets, because the amount of gas tax you pay is a function of mileage and your gas mileage. So there'll be a range that we can set this mileage-based fee, and it's really a function of those two things. And so we'll have a chance to decide what that is, and I would be arguing that if you have an electric vehicle, it's pretty efficient. And so it would be a more efficient rate than somebody who's driving a 12 miles per gallon the tax that they would pay per mile. So we still have to set that rate. And so, I don't think we would set up one that would punish people with a higher rate than I would get on my Prius today. So, but at the same time, not in, such a small rate that it doesn't bring in the necessary funds. And I would also point out, when we go to set this rate, it's an opportunity for us to look at the gas tax and say, do we want to index both of them so that we don't have to come back again in the future? But I'm just putting that out there.
However.
Go right ahead,
Yeah.
keep going, you guys are on a roll.
We will know how much we have taken in both federal and state gas tax. So that we can factor that in and then figure out what an average did we, I thought we kicked around 12,000 a year, 12,000 miles a year or something. And base that on, so many miles per gallon or something, yeah. We could do it that way so that we approximate what we're taking in. I don't know, just, but we can figure that out another day.
There was a chart that I remember that showed low, medium, and high mileages and some equivalencies between what it would cost. Anyway, I just remember there was I think the agency might have done that. And the low, it was 5,000 miles a year. So, but there's some work been done on that.
Representative Casey, please.
When you were saying a vehicle gets 12 miles a gallon, electric vehicles get better than that, don't they?
I wasn't talking about an electric vehicle.
Okay, so we're gonna put a mileage-based user fee on my dump truck?
No,
No.
Okay.
Somebody.
Cause I just pass that on to my customers is all I do. I was just wondering what he meant when he said 12 miles a gallon.
There was a part of the testimony in regards to Patrick, if we get to, 2050 and electric's all there is, mileage-based user fee will be all of the collection of.
Yeah, good.
Yeah,
Probably still be driving. All right,
So,
where are we suggesting?
well, like Representative Copeland was concerned about this.
Yeah, no, like I said, I apparently, I mean, I can read the table, I'm the only one, I still have my concerns, but you know, it is what it is.
And I am, we're not setting the rate at this point. Are saying that the intent is that on that piece, that it'd be higher than what it was previous to this discussion, that it wasn't just the state gas tax portion, that there is, in fairness, that there is quite a bit more paid than what was there.
I mean,
We're not looking to set the number today, but we are, the gas tax is more complex than what everybody says when it's 13 cents, 28 cents.
right. And additionally,
So,
you know, you can look at it. That we get money from the federal government through and it's through gas tax, the federal gas tax.
No, I understand that though, like, I know Phil explained it, but I still think we're sort of taking all that room for the ups and downs, it's hard, you know, when the gas tax fluctuates. You know, and it's gonna be a ballpark, like you said, they can probably factor that in, but you're sort of taking all that wiggle room out. I just think they're gonna be getting hit harder than probably a gas, non-PVD.
They have to adjust the average yearly thing, and adjust it year, so
Yeah,
their mileage-based users fee may go up and down yearly based on what the gas tax is. You know, the,
yeah, man, they can structure, I'm just saying, no, should be silent on it and let them figure that.
Yeah. yeah.
Maybe is my point, this is just a tent, doesn't really, you know.
but or is the intent, the part that was the shift for me that struck home is that just the state level amount isn't a comparable amount to what so something higher than that, but also recognizing the whole goal of all of this law that is out there that we're guided by is that incentivizing EVs to be more EVs. So we don't want to be, I get the argument there, you can't go, there has to be incentive for that portion of the electric that you're going to pay less, because you still have to charge the thing, right? So you are paying somewhere, right? That money goes to somebody else though.
Yeah, and like I said, we're not getting $5 now anyways on.
Well, that's an interesting take on that too, right? We shift that money over to utilities away from.
Oh, wait, just move on, yeah.
So how do we get a portion of that to help fix the road, right? Because you are going to pay to get your energy to drive. You have to pay, you still have to pay to get energy to drive, right?
You can't tax.
You can't tax, you don't, I'm just saying, put your money out of your pocket in comparison. You're still having to pay. So I guess you're not counting that when you do that.
Well.
You're still paying that money out of your pocket.
Well, you're paying for the gas and then you're paying for the tax. Electric vehicles aren't paying for the gas, but the mileage-based user fee would be an equivalence of the tax.
So we're gonna table this for now.
No, you don't need me, like I said, I can read it, I'm the only one that raised the concern.
So it's insane, but we will have a chance to set the rate.
Do we have any other suggestions in this particular, for this section? We don't want to table it. We're not ready to check it off, or we are ready to check it off, or we want to table it. And we still have another section to go to, so.
No, you don't have to take it, like I said, you can show hands.
But your language is still of suggestion of needing to be changed.
Yes.
Yep.
All right, so in that case, then we're tabling it for today. We're not gonna decide on it today. We're tabling it for today. Damien's gonna clean that piece up. And we're gonna at least spend a few minutes on the next section before we. Yes, Representative.
Can I bring up something else at some point? We're hoping to discuss a few things that we had talked about before that might get rid of.
From Kurtzville,
Included.
we still have to. go over that, but-
I'm open to that after we get to
Yeah, no,
one more section.
I
And
just
then
didn't-
we can start
I
with.
just
we
didn't
have-
want it to get forgotten. that's
Yeah,
all.
right.
Is that
We
H 426?
Yeah.
That, okay.
And I think we can highlight specific things that
Yes, and I guess I've been anticipating that at some point that you would highlight that, highlights, and I would say
Just
that
wanted to bring that up.
when we,
Whenever it happens, this time, I just.
Well,
We have just
We have-
section 4 right now to
we
finish.
gotta go to, we're gonna do to section 14, or is that now 15 or however that is reading? We still have section 4 open. We haven't gotten to section now 14.
Okay,
And 15 is just the effective dates. So we're still leaving 4 and 13 open. We're going to 14 now. And we are picking up tomorrow morning. We're leaving 13 open because he's just working on the language now. And
oh, we did.
I'm fried on that one. So
We can go over it again.
but we're gonna go to 14 and then we're back here tomorrow after the floor. Would give you opportunity to at least
Okay.
Highlight what you're
Yeah. I just-
interested
I
in,
just-
because
I
we
just
will all
wanted-
be here
didn't want it to
within.
get lost.
We went through Kurt's bill except for
We'll go-
maybe 2 or 3 at the very end.
We'll go to, we'll pick up with that tomorrow and we'll go back to, first we'll go back to 13 and if there's been any updates on 4. And right now we'll go 14 over the next 8 minutes and we'll be done, regardless of where we get on 14. And then tomorrow morning, we'll pick up on 4, 13, 14 and H 426.
The three of us are gonna be talking to Ross at 4 o'clock about transit and school bus opportunities.
Okay,
Which is in.
so then
Which is
you
in
can,
14.
Yeah, which is in.
then you can, you'll have opportunity in tomorrow's
Yeah.
piece.
Yeah.
To highlight your,
Discussion, yeah.
okay. That's our committee way forward and you got, we'll see what we're at on 14.
So I don't have anything new on 14, except to ask if there's any clarity on, so if you'll remember, we left off with ACCD had come in and testified. There was some confusion about what they were actually planning to do with this $1.4 million. And whether you wanted to leave this money in the bill or not. Based on whether they could actually utilize it this year or whether it could be utilized better somewhere else, given the shortage of funds if they're not going to utilize it this year. So that's where I remember us being.
And I don't have a clear clarification back yet. I did hear reserves in that testimony, and I'm pretty clear that in my mind, we want mileage-based user fee money to be programmed. And secondarily, we have 13, I think, sites and vendors that have committed on the NEVI program that have Vermont companies that have money already spent that have now been cut off. And if I had money that, that was in related to electric vehicles, that may or may not be my second choice. And they obviously still have the program. But for me, mileage-based user fee needs funding to move forward so that we would then have money to talk about putting back into this program and other, but I'm not sure we can do anything until we hear clarification from them. I guess those are where I'm at. Yes, Representative.
What I'd just like to say what I said yesterday is my concern would be that you take the money, but then somehow the money's not there next year and we don't get the money. And I feel it's a really worthy program. We've got all sorts of competing interests and that's what we're trying to balance. But I guess first of all, we need clarification of whether they use that money and what would be the impact if we didn't get it this year.
And this money is going away.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So when
Yeah,
we're talking
right.
about like loans, do we take this money and said, once we get up and running with a miles base, the first 1.4 million we can say goes back
Well, I
to
mean, yeah,
backfill, especially if they're waiting.
but we can't tie up your legislature.
Right.
If this didn't happen until, what is this, 27, 28, whatever,
Yeah.
That's my concern.
Yeah, I don't disagree, certainly, the NEVI program, if we, find a way, that's important to all of the goals of the state. And, it is local companies that are doing it. And, then the mileage-based user fee, I totally agree, we want to make sure that happens and we need to do whatever we want. This program is a temporary program, really, it's only gonna last 2 or 3 years more. I believe we'll have more funds that go into it next year with what we get over the next year for the additional infrastructure funds from registration.
Yes, correct. So the way the language is currently written, this fund sunsets as soon as the mileage-based user fee program comes online. So we would anticipate that there would not be an FY 27. And, you know, and I think you made some really good points about considering, given the shifting federal and state availability of resources, do we need to rethink whether community charging is the highest and best use?
Well, I would say, I think it is, you know, or as important to meet our state goals. But I think getting clarification from them saying, you know, where they are now, when do they expect to sort of peter out? And I wouldn't want the program to peter out if we want to keep it going.
So is somebody gonna contact them or?
We have had outreach and they are trying to clarify.
Right.
And I don't think I need to say more than that at this point in terms, I don't want to speak for what I necessarily thought that I heard, what they meant to present, and what really is the case is we're looking for clarification. I don't have I do expect that they're working on it, and unless we've heard something new, unless you'd like to comment on it or not, that's up to you.
I think I just wanted to just frame one thing, which was, yes, this program has been important, but effectively, we have no more highway fast charging program, period. I mean, that's gone. So that program has ended and we haven't built out our highway fast charging network. So just I hope everybody understands, like, that federal money is not coming back. And so we have no resources there. We have 11 shovel-ready projects with folks that had grants and contracts put on hold. So we have Vermont businesses principally who don't have a job to do now because the feds pulled the money out. So I just wasn't sure if that had been stated that clearly for folks.
So for today, I guess I would say that we're still seeking clarification on that. I'm reaching back out on section 4 because I do think they need to comment on section 4 and section 13 because of where we're at. We're tabling that. We'll revisit that one in the morning. That one we can handle ourselves. 14, we need different clarifications. And 15 would only be as anything come up that would change any effective dates of what we were doing. So,
Not that I'm aware of.
okay, so 15 is basically still a check mark then, or now a new section and a check mark. We got 3 pieces left, which we'll start with in the morning, and then you will, those that wish the opportunity can give us a preview of what they may or may want on H4 36 items up for discussion after floor tomorrow. But we'll start with the 4 sections, 3 sections that are left open.
26.
426, correct, thank you. Any other